Rhyme and Reason, presented by Mr. G. His guest this week is the musician and activist Billy Bragg.
Welcome to Rhyme and Reason. Tonight I'm joined by someone who could be described as the child of a very English revolution. I welcome the bard of barking, Billy Bragg. How you doing?
I'm good.
I was a miner, I was a docker, I was a railwayman between the wars.
Now I want to kick this off big style. I figure let's just start with some of the big boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to kick the show off with some William Blake.
Splendid.
And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded here amongst these dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow of burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. I guess that must evoke many a schoolboy memory.
It does, but I think it's also, for me, as a deep meaning for the politics in England. England is a very strange place with regards to politics. We had our revolution before everybody else in the 1640s, before anyone had come up with ideas like individual freedom, or Thomas Paine wrote The Rights of Man. You know, he hadn't even been born for another 100 years. So the people who were attempting to create a fairer society in the wake of the Civil War were doing so in terms of taking their cue not from Marxism or socialism, but from the Bible. Yeah. So at the very, very beginnings of sort of left-wing consciousness in our country, there is a spark of the divine. It doesn't matter how you feel about religion, even if you're an atheist.
That's true.
Those people were looking for a language in which to articulate the unfairness that they felt the tail end of the medieval period, the beginning, pre-industrial period, that strange interregnum between Charles I and Charles II. And the language that they brought was very, very powerfully divine. And our link back to that is Blake. Blake was around 100 years later. He was around at the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution. When he talks about the dark satanic mills, he's really, to me,
about the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, he's talking about the Industrial Revolution, and I love that imagery. Bring me my bow, bring me my chariot of fire, but till we, that collective idea of all of us working together to make a better England. I think that's what the song is about.
Let me just, because the thing is that Jerusalem is part of a book, Milton, that he wrote. Right? That's right. So this is just before it kicks into Jerusalem. It goes, "Rise up, O young men of the new age. Set your foreheads against the ignorant hirelings. For we have hirelings in the camps and the courts and the universities, who would, if they could, ever depress the mental and prolong the corporal wars. Painters, on you I call. Sculptors, architects, suffer not the fashionable fools to depress your powers by the prices they pretend to give you for contemptible works, or expensive and advertising boasts that they make of such works. For there is a class of men who would delight in destroying."
And was the holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures.
Mr. Billy Bragg, you were born in Barking.
Yeah, I was born in 1957. I was sort of like, in the 60s, living in Barking. It was a big industrial town. I had a lot of immigrants coming to work at the car factory. Yeah. Left school when I was 16 in 1974 and did a number of sort of boring old jobs for about 10 years until I worked out how to make a living through my writing. But the first thing that ever happened to me that I got a hint of it was that I wrote a poem at school.
Okay.
And the teacher liked it so much that he wrote home to my parents to ask if I'd copied it out of a book of poetry. And when it transpired I hadn't, that I'd actually written it, I ended up reading it out on Radio Essex, which I was only 12 at the time, and I thought, this is a good sign.
Big time.
I'm a poet.
Yeah.
I must be a poet. I actually wrote it in a power cut. I can remember sitting in a power cut and waiting for my parents to come home with a candle on the table.
That's definitely the 70s, isn't it?
Yeah.
Power cuts. Yeah.
And it was kind of like, I felt like I was a monk in a monastery. It went like this. This child was born in Bethlehem upon a Christmas day. Not many people knew it then, but he was here to stay. This child, his name was Jesus. He died upon the cross. He said, "Forgive them, Father," and the darkness came across. And then there's another final verse. I can't remember, but the final two lines was this: "Get on our knees and pray that there's some hope for mankind that he'll come back someday." I mean, it's pretty straightforward doggerel, but I suppose for a 12-year-old,
that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it was quite powerful.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Now, you set up a punk band, Riff Raff.
Yeah, I did, yeah. What punk did was it empowered you to say what you wanted to say and do what you wanted to do. In my case, you know, I was been playing guitar in my mum's back room with my mates for a couple of years, playing songs by The Who and the Rolling Stones. I had absolutely no idea how to get from my mum's back room to play Earl's Court, where I'd seen the Rolling Stones. I had absolutely no beginning of an idea how to do that. And then one day we went out to see the Jam, and they were playing in a little boozer, and they were my age, and they looked like me.
Yeah.
And I went to see the Clash, and they were doing all the things I loved about the Rolling Stones, but they were my age. And I suddenly had this sort of moment of revelation with the way you do it
Is to do it.
is to do it.
Stop dreaming of the quiet life, someone will never know.
Punk wasn't a haircut or a something you could buy. It was an attitude.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about that attitude, it kind of like inspired a new generation of poets. You would go to gigs and there will be, you know, poets standing there, most notably John Cooper Clarke.
Yeah.
Who's a very, very powerful poet still. And, you know, the stuff that he, you know, stuff like Beasley
Street, yeah.
Incredible poem, you know.
Yeah.
Keith Joseph smiles and a baby dies.
Yeah, I've got, evidently Chicken Town.
I do know it.
The bloody cops are bloody keen, the bloody keep it bloody clean, the bloody chief's a bloody swine who bloody draws the bloody line. At bloody fun and bloody games, the bloody kids he bloody blames are nowhere to be found anywhere in Chicken Town. The bloody scene is bloody sad, the bloody news is bloody bad, the bloody weed is bloody turf, the bloody speed is bloody surf, the bloody folks are bloody daft, don't make me bloody laugh, it hurts to look around everywhere in Chicken Town. The bloody train is bloody late, you bloody wait, you bloody lost and bloody found, stuck in bloody Chicken Town. The bloody view is bloody vile, for bloody miles and bloody miles, the bloody babies bloody cry, the bloody flowers bloody die, the bloody food is bloody muck, the bloody drains are bloody, the colour scheme is bloody brown everywhere in Chicken Town.
Oh, it's such a great song. You know what?
I thought the swear word was at the end.
No, the swear words, it's
Yeah,
just for the listeners at home, it's not bloody that John Cooper Clarke says. It's a more, what should we say, an Anglo-Saxon word that he uses. But my son came home from school last year, given to him by his English teacher, which I just thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
Blue eyes fighting the grey eyes, fighting the tears. Arm to the teeth, through all the words reaching all the years. I advanced across a poppy field. I saw the gleamish you raised your shield.
You joined the army for
I did, yeah, in between punk and the miners' strike, yeah. For a while, I was a tank driver. That had a real salutary effect on my writing. One of the reasons I joined the army is to just get rid of this stupid idea that I could ever make a living doing this job. When I went to see my careers officer when I was still at school and told him I didn't want to work in the car factory, he said, well, you got three choices: the army, the navy, or the air force. If you want to press the eject button on your previous existence, join the army is a good way to do that. And I thought that would just get rid of it. But as soon as I got there, it really sharpened my poetic edge, and I started writing loads and loads of stuff. And I came to the conclusion before the end of basic training that actually this thing isn't going to go away. So I paid me 175 quid, got myself out of the army, picked up a single electric guitar and just went out and started doing gigs on my own.
Just because you're better than me doesn't mean I'm lazy. Just because you're going forwards doesn't mean I'm going backwards.
Let's talk about your relationship with poetry. Was it something that you used to read as a child? Was it something that you said, your English teacher was very encouraging? Was it something you discovered later on in life?
My dad used to read Kipling to me. My dad had been in India. He came back with this kind of love of Kipling and Kipling's idea of India. That sort of military poetry seemed to fit into very much with that period of me. And another thing about Kipling that really resonated with me was he spoke in a language that my grandparents spoke in. They were Victorians.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of them around when I was a kid, Victorians. I mean, it sounds odd now, doesn't it? But, he fit neatly. I don't think Tennyson would have done the same gig. I didn't know anyone who spoke like Tennyson or... He's actually been as influential in my songwriting as Bob Dylan. I've quoted him in songs.
Yeah.
I've stolen images from him. Yeah, I've
you,
certainly used his metre.
Because is it the Picked song?
The Picked song is actually a complete poem, that he wrote that's part of Pook's Hill. Yeah. And that's, it's a very powerful anti-establishment poem, We are the little folk, we, too little to love or to hate. Leave us alone and you'll see how we can bring down the state. I mean, in my hands... That's an anti-Thatcherist song.
Yeah.
Kipling was talking about the Picts outside the Roman Empire. So it's even, even Kipling was able to write anti-imperial songs, and the idea of him as a racist in the sense that we know it, I think is put under question, because often he talks about Indian people, African people, and he has a lot of respect for them. Gunga Din, the payoff line is, you're a better man than I am.
Yeah.
He also wrote great historical poems. I mean, there's a poem that he wrote called A River's Tale, which he wrote in 1911, which is about the River Thames. And in the book, he's talking about the river being very, very old, telling its story to the bridges on the river, who are very, very young. And he tells this long story, and one of the things he says is, and Norseman and Negro and Gaul and Greek drank with the Britons in Barking Creek. Now, Barking Creek was like a mile from my house on the River Thames. It's the River Roding. And the idea that the Norseman and the Negro and the Gaul and the Greek were all there in prehistoric times really chimed in with me, because, as I said, living in an industrial borough with a car factory, people were coming all the time. It's always been a huge area of immigration, and still is. This historical context, that there have always been people from everywhere around the world in Barking, chimed in with the Barking that I saw when I read this in the school library. And I thought, this guy's talking about something here.
Mixing pop and politics, he asks me what the use is. I offer him embarrassment and my usual excuses.
But my favourite one is one that from Barrack Room Ballads. That's the book that we had when I was at home. Barrack Room Ballads and Departmental Ditties. It was an old school library book. I don't know where my dad got it from. And there was a great poem in there called The Conundrum of the Workshops. When the flush of a newborn sun fell first on Eden's green and gold, our father Adam sat under the tree and scratched with a stick in the mould. And the first rude sketch that the world had seen was joy to his mighty heart, till the devil whispered behind the leaves, "It's pretty, but is it art?" Wherefore he called to his wife, and fled to fashion his work anew, the first of his race who cared a fig for the first most dread review. And he left his law to the use of his sons, and that was glorious gain. When the devil chuckled, "Is it art?" in the ear of the branded Cain. We have learned to whittle the Eden tree to the shape of a supplest peg. We have learned to bottle our parents twain the yolk of an addled egg. We know that the tail must wag the dog, for the horse is drawn by the cart. But the devil whoops as he whooped of old. It's clever, but is it art? See, I just love that. I'm always thinking of that when I see, whenever I see anything that's, in any way has any pretensions, I think of that poem. I mean, he's great. He uses some great words. But what he's saying, fundamentally, is what he's saying, I think, is something that a lot of people will relate to, that question that bugs us all. What we're doing, what we have fashioned, what we have made. Does it say anything to anybody, or is it just a load of pretentious talk that only we like?
I'd like to actually read you a poem. It's from a poet called Rabindranath Tagore, and he was a Bengali poet from the late 19th and early 20th century. This was one of Gandhi's favourite songs. He used to write lots of songs. The name of this poem is Ekla Chalo Re. If they answer not to thy call, walk alone. If they are afraid and cower mutely facing the wall, O thou of evil luck, open thy mind and speak out alone. If they turn away and desert you when crossing the wilderness, O thou of evil luck, trample the thorns under thy tread, and along the bloodline track, travel alone. If they do not hold up the light when the night is troubled with storm, O thou of evil luck, with the thunder flame of pain, ignite thy own heart and let it burn alone. For if they do not answer thy call, walk alone.
That could be talking about me trying to make it as a singer-songwriter. Ultimately, that idea of you have to do it yourself. If nobody takes any notice, get on with it yourself and do it yourself.
That's pretty much what I want to read.
It's the core tenets of punk rock. I mean, obviously, it comes at it at a different way, but that's a very, very powerful poem.
I was 21 years when I wrote this song. I'm 22 now, but I won't be for long. People ask me when will I grow up to understand what the girls I knew at school already pushing bands.
Let's talk about the release of your first album. So your first album was called Life's a Riot with Spy vs. Spy, came out in 1983. And You had the songs The Man in the Iron Mask and New England, which was later a hit for Kirsty MacColl. If I was to describe your style, I would call it actually quite passionate and like almost romantic. Yeah, I've looked through like many of your lyrics, and there's the obvious political driving force. It's like, you know, this needs to be said, this needs to be said. But some of your, I suppose, like love poems, like sentimental ones, they do touch me.
Well, that's what I'm aiming to do. I'm aiming
Yeah.
to move you one way or another. You know, I mean, I just write about the things that bug me. Sometimes it's girls, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's other things. You know, that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, I think writing poetry or writing songs, and I don't think there's a huge amount of difference, it seems to me is a really good way of processing those things that frustrate you.
You said you loved me and it broke my heart. I was always your prisoner, right from the start. The nights you spend without me, this house is like a dungeon, and you only return to torture me more.
You know, I do some work in prisons.
Yeah.
Supplying guitars to people who are doing rehabilitation work using music, and often that involves encouraging young men and women to write songs. And the people from the Ministry of Justice often ask me if this is vocational, you know, are these people going to get work? And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. What we're doing, or I hope we're doing, is we're giving people a way, once they come out of prison, if they can get hold of a guitar, we're giving them a way to process the things that they find that challenge them in a non-confrontational way.
There's power in a factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in a union.
Is there any poems that you feel like, if we look at, like, say, the miners' strike and the struggle that England went through as a country, is there any poem you think that would tap into that?
Ooh, I think it's hard to think of a poet, you know, and the poets that I was looking at during the miners' strike tended to be foreign. You know, Ernesto Cardenal, who was a Nicaraguan poet, Mayakovsky, Vladimir Mayakovsky, who was a Russian poet. They were the ones who were writing about the struggle. Yeah, the great thing about Mayakovsky was that he was incredibly modern. You know, he sort of looked like a member of Depeche Mode. He did great graphic art, and he wrote geezer poems, you know. He wrote this poem, Talking with a Taxman About Poetry, which I named an album after, which basically he was trying to say, it's a great thing, he's trying to say to the taxman, look, poetry is a job like anything else.
Yeah.
And I have costs. Because I have to go and, you know, get these ideas and these images and these words, the stuff that you know, make my poetry from. These are the things that I need to fabricate what I'm doing. So I read that, you know, during the miners' strike, knocking around with someone. I just thought, this is brilliant.
Fell in love with him.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm doing.
Didn't he criticise Stalin?
Yeah, he did. I mean,
And
you know,
lived.
Well, he lived. Eventually, he killed himself, unfortunately.
yeah.
But yeah, he questioned Stalin. He was incredibly modern. He really spoke to me during that period. Although I do fear that it kind of loses something in translation. Russian is such a lyrical language. Let's have a bit of Mayakovsky. This is called to account. Yeah. The drum of war thunders and thunders. It calls, thrust iron into the living from every country. Slave after slave are thrown onto bayonet steel. For the sake of what? The earth shivers, hungry and stripped. Mankind is vaporized in a bloodbath. Only so, someone, somewhere, can get hold of Albania. Now, you don't have to put the word Afghanistan in it, don't you? Or Iraq, to see exactly what he's talking about.
And the captain was there to record our pursuits for posterity. Me and the corporal out on a spree, damned from here to eternity.
This is a poem by Thomas Hardy, and written in 1902. So this is before First World War, before Second World War, and it's called The Man He Killed. Had he and I but met by some old ancient inn, we should have sat us down to wet, right many a nipperkin. But ranged as infantry and staring face to face, I shot at him as he at me and killed him in his place. I shot him dead because he was my foe. Just so my foe, of course he was, that's clear enough, although he thought he'd enlist perhaps, offhand like just as I was out of work, had sold his traps, no other reason why. Yes, quaint and curious war is, you shoot a fellow down, that you'll treat if met in any bar, unhelped to half a crown.
Kiss me good night and say my prayers. Leave the lights on at the top of the stairs. Tell me the names of the stars up in the sky.
I'd like to talk to you about the song Tank Park Salutes. That's a song that you wrote as a tribute to your father who passed away when you were 18.
Yeah.
Daddy, is it true that we all have to die?
How, in terms of like, say, when you write about causes that are, let's say, outside yourself, like when you write about the war or other things that are outside yourself, sometimes it can be very easy to sort of like just imagine how a certain thing is and then just go, okay, it's like that, bang. When you're writing about something so personal, was it easier or harder for you?
Well, it was harder in the sense that until I wrote that song when I was 33 years old, I'd never ever spoken to anybody, including close members of my family, about my father dying. So I was kind of shocked when it came out. It actually came out in the middle of writing another song. I was writing a different song completely. And I wrote this line, I closed my eyes and when I looked, your name was in the memorial book. And that line kind of opened up this whole sort of almost like a secret passage that had been boarded over for years and years, and I kind of fell through and thought to myself, where does this secret passage lead to? So I went down this emotional passage, if you like, and I did really want to kind of write it from a kid's point of view as well, from a child's point of view, you know, because until my son was born in 1993, which is a few years after I wrote Tank Park Salute, I really was the son of the father. That's who I was. That's what shaped my sense of being. Once my son was born, I then became the father of the son, and I started to look at the whole relationship between myself and my dad in a different way. I think perhaps everyone has that experience, and it's been good because I felt much more closer to him.
Rome never looks where she treads. Always her heavy hooves fall on our stomachs, our hearts or our heads. And Rome never heeds when we call.
See you the windy levels spread about the gates of Rye. Oh, that was where the Northmen fled when Alfred's ships came by. See you our pastures wide and lone, where the red oxen browse. Oh, there was a city, thronged and known ere London boasted a house. See you after rain the trace of mound and ditch and wall. Oh, that was a legion's camping place when Caesar sailed from Gaul. And see you marks that show and fade like shadows on the downs. Oh, they are the lines the flint men made to guard their wondrous towns. Trackway and camp and city lost, salt marsh where now is corn. Old wars, old peace, old arts that cease. And so was England born.
We are the thorn in the foot.
And that's what I like about Kipling. It's that thread, you know, when he talks about the flint men, you know, before we came here, there were people who were totally unlike us. But
different
they were
language,
in this everything.
Yeah.
As different perhaps as the settlers to the Native Americans, but they were in this space called England. You know, it doesn't make it a special place, but it is this space that we share. Go to Stonehenge. It doesn't matter that we don't understand what they do. And they were trying to make sense of that space. And that ultimately has got to be what being English is about space rather than race. How we get on with each other.
What we do with the space.
Where you are rather than where you're from.
Yeah.
That's got to be crucially about the bond, what bonds us together as a community. So, I mean, I know it's a weird place to pick up something like that from Kipling, but, you know, the right, and particularly the far right, you know, use Englishness and ideas of the Anglo-Saxons and of people like Kipling. They use it as a way of excluding people. Yeah. And there's a very, very old saying, which is, if you want to defeat your enemy, you must first learn his songs.
Mr. Love and Justice, if there's one thing that I must do, if only for my own sake, I've got to see this thing through.
When you talk about Kipling, you know,
Yeah.
the if always comes up.
I mean, it was the most popular, you know, most popular, I think 1995 was voted
Yeah.
the most popular poem.
Yeah, and I think it's fine for what it is.
There's more to the man.
I think there's more to the man. Yeah, you always end up getting defined by one song. You know, for me, it'd probably be Between the Wars.
Between the Wars,
and
yeah.
I live with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I would say I'm much more. I would rather you look at Tank Park Salute. It says more about me as a person.
But I think that's a good introduction because it's probably my first awareness of
Yeah.
Kipling. We actually had it stuck up on our refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, you know, we all want to write a poem that you could stick on your refrigerator.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what Kipling was thinking of when he wrote it.
Well, they didn't have refrigerators. Okay, I'll go with if. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you and make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about and don't deal in lies, or being hated and don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master. If you can think and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make traps for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will that says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can forgive the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and what's more, you'll be a man, my son.
That payoff line always seems the wrong payoff line to me.
How would you change it?
How would I change it?
Yeah.
If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it. And what's more, you're a public schoolboy. Thank you very much. Good night.
Billy Bragg, it's been good to lay back and think of England with you. Thanks very much.
When I'm drinking with Thomas Parr.